Okay, thank you everybody this afternoon. I'd just like to start by saying I solemnly swear that this is the last time that you will see me today before a break. We're going to be up here talking about data for about 25, 30 minutes or so. And you might also ask, what crazy people, what wild people put a session on about data at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a full day conference? It's bold people like us, bold trailblazers who know the story of what data can do for us and why we're here. I see some nods. I think you're in for a good ride. So settle up, settle in. Don't get too relaxed because we're then going to have a break and then come back for the last bit. But why we're doing this session on data, this bold session at 3 o'clock on a day where everyone wants to talk, it's because we've seen and we believe that data really is where it's at the moment. Data helps us show others what we've done, what incredible impact we've done. Data shows us the opportunity, shows us the possibility for what more might we do. Data, when it's used really well, as we'll be discussing, really enhances our storytelling. And our storytelling is what we do and how we change more people's minds and bring them into the fold of work that we do. And this doesn't quite fit that flow, but I couldn't help myself. Without data, it's just another opinion. So with that, I am joined by three excellent people who have made their way into careers with data some way. So we're going to do some intros and then get into the session. And I challenged each of these excellent panel members to think about and respond to, how did you find yourself working in data? Or why did you say yes to being on a panel at 3 in the afternoon to talk about data? So we'll start with Sharon, if you could respond to either of those questions with an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, the good question. Not sure why I chose 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's just how the agenda rolled on. And it was just interesting. How did I get into data? I am not a data person. I didn't even do advanced math. But I happen today work for a bunch of engineers and they love data. And the space that I work in, when you're changing people's behaviours and you want them to buy more ethically, think about the impact of what they're buying and where that product and the product of that comes from is supporting disadvantaged people, communities, etc. Data does tell the story. So that's a little bit of how I got into data. Yeah.
Thanks, Sharon. Diego, do you please introduce yourself? And
Yes, testing. Like Sharon, nice to meet you all. I'm Diego, work at the ISC, the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. I'm not a data person as well, some sort of graduating or sort of in a way, I even joke that in my previous life, I used to be a lawyer, was a lawyer for 10 years, and all we could hear about data was data protection, most of it. And so it wasn't the data analytics that we use now at the ISC to understand how we can obviously drive social change, social impacts. So I've been involved with sustainability projects, both in local government and currently at the not-for-profit sector. And we do believe that data plays a crucial role in sort of understanding, but obviously we'll get there. What else more needs to be done instead of on how we interpret data. And just for those who are not familiar with the work we do at the ISC, so we're a peak body, a member-based organization, and our purpose is to ensure that all infrastructure projects deliver social, cultural, environmental, and economic outcomes.
thanks, Diego. And Michael, Head of Impact and Data, or some combination of those words. How are you here?
I can't believe I'm the only one on the panel who is a data person. So I love data. As Beck said, so I'm the head of impact data and digital at Social Traders. So I look after all of our data, particular focus on our impact data, our theory of change, and all of our data products for our members. I love data because I once had a mentor tell me that data doesn't lie, but it can be easily misinterpreted. And so I love getting stuck into it and figuring out what it means.
I love all those answers, so thank you very much for entertaining me at this session. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we're talking about data or data and what we measure really does matter. And often we're measuring things because somebody has told us to. They may have put goals on us, KPIs, targets. And we know that when we measure stuff, and particularly when somebody's looking for the results, it gets done and things change. So Sharon, can you share, please, CPB's journey of data tracking and measurement, how you've got to where you are now?
Okay. All right. So I will go back to 2019. Back in 2019, CPB launched their first RAP. So it was the Innovate RAP. Within the RAP, the company decided that we should set targets. And now, just to give you a bit of a background, the RAP had already been written before I'd come into the business. But my job was to launch it and make it happen. So when I was looking at the stats, someone had written 1% for procurement. And then someone else had written 4% for headcount. And I went, okay, 4% I like, 2% I didn't like. I didn't tell anyone this, and I will share this in front of everyone today. I changed the 1 to a 2. Now, the funny thing about all of that is no one actually noticed that because they were so focused on how it was written, making sure that the commas were in place. So after the launch of the RAP, my next up manager was running around going, oh my God, we've got a target of 2%. And I'm sort of sitting there going, okay, I've just passed probation. They can't get rid of me. It's okay. Now we've got to reach a 2% target. And guess what? We did. And so I took CPB, or we went on this marvelous journey. And because when you set a target, you've got to know how you're going to measure it. You've got to have all these systems that talk to each other. You've got to have a center of truth. How are you going to validate that your spend is what it is? So ABNs are very important. So Supply Nation, so I've got Ben in the audience here who remembers me going, hey, can I get a list of all those ABNs? Social Traders, I do the same. So anyway, so we went about this process, and then we got to the stage of launching our second RAP, our stretch RAP, in November 2022. And we've got all the systems in place. We've got flags of identifications. We've got centers of truth. We've got everything. So then it was around how do we go from 2% and higher? So within our stretch RAP, and I didn't have to fudge the figures because I was in control, was that we said that we would actually go from 2% to 2.5 to 3%. But part of that process was becoming a member of Raising the Bar. So it doesn't matter whatever happens with the company, and if we decide not to follow mandated policy, we still have an obligation with Business Council Australia and Supply Nation to continue on our journey of reaching that 3% by 2025. So that's a little bit about how we got to where we are today. And there's a few other questions, so I'll save them. I'll save my story for as we go along.
I'm looking forward to the more reveals and going to check every check change on documents that come my way. But I love it. Make the change. Diego, if you could share, please, with ISC's impact measurement for the infrastructure projects, how you balance the qualitative and quantitative measures that helps companies work with you.
Yes, so we hold a significant amount of data across Australia and New Zealand for all infrastructure projects. Obviously here the focus is on social outcomes. And I guess if you look at infrastructure is a system of systems. And what's the purpose of infrastructure? It's to enable people to thrive. So when we look at a project level, so all the sort of the percentages and metrics that Sharon was mentioning before, so we collected all of that data, and obviously we report annually as well through our impact report. and in a way it sets new benchmarks to the industry, right? So what everyone is doing and how can we go about. But this is the quantitative approach. Sort of to your point, we also apply a qualitative approach because numbers, percentage, metrics alone, they don't provide a sort of meaningful full picture of what they mean. And when we believe that standardizing the way we collect data on social impacts, obviously it's helpful, but also needs to come together with a qualitative approach. So have different audiences with different perspectives and people, they want to hear the next level of the story. I'm not getting to the storytelling. I know it's the next one. But yeah, so we hold a significant amount of data and through our rating tools. So we apply sustainability rating tools to projects, and we look at all sort of metrics and very specific requirements across workforce, legacy, stakeholder engagement. But it's always important to have this balance between the quantitative and qualitative.
Thanks, Diego. I hope everyone's noticing that you're being brought on a journey. You're being told a story. We're dripping things that you're going to be hearing about in the next question. But before we get there, Michael, can you share from Social Traders how we've started our data journey, but also with the lens of what we've seen in Victoria because of the government's social procurement framework?
Sure. Well, our data journey, we've come a long way. I've been here for 4 years now, almost. Come a long way even in that time, from quite early days. And I think as a social enterprise sector, we're often quite data starved. There's not as much out there as other more mature sectors. And a lot of what we try and do, everything that I try and do and my team, is try and give data and evidence back to the sector to upskill and lift the sector as one. So things like our PACE report the last 2 years and the new RISE publication and the dashboard, which unfortunately didn't work, the QR code this morning, but you'll all get the link after this.
The website works, the QR code didn't. So you can, when we finish talking, go onto your mobile and have a look at socialtraders.com.au.
Thanks, Beck. But in terms of what we've been seeing, as you said, Sharon, it's really interesting to hear you hit targets and then set targets and then meet them. Most of the activity we see in social procurement happens in Victoria. Most of our buyer members are in Victoria and the spend between them. And a lot of that has to do with the social procurement framework, which incentivized infrastructure and construction projects to set targets. And so what we see, a lot of our members come on board and they're only interested in counting their spend with social enterprises. And we do that very easily for them. We have our impact spend reports, but what we can help them do to take them on the journey from just spend is to help to understand how much impact outcomes that spend has actually created in terms of hours of employment, in terms of environmental outcomes for people and planet. And so we've done over 300 of those reports in the last 6 years. As you saw before, over $800 million. And so helping buyers understand that their buying power can make a difference, which then gets them excited because usually if they're talking to us at Social Traders, they're socially motivated, and then they can take that evidence through the business and start to make a case for bigger targets.
Which does lead nicely into what do we do with it? How do we use the data, the evidence of real and credible impact by social enterprises through social enterprise procurement to help tell the story to people who are new to this or are skeptical or who don't understand the value of a diverse supplier market? So Sharon, back to CPB, can we share how you've used some of the data that you've collated to tell the story of how you can't afford not to do this work?
Okay, so now it's already been mentioned about the mandated policies, so that also contributes to the targets that you set. But most importantly, through those mandated policies, this is what our clients would like us to do. But also too, with that, you need to be able to normalise it inside of the company so that you don't have a project director running around like, you know, the rabbit out of Alice in Wonderland and he's got the top hat and the little watch saying, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. So with that, you know, it's like, oh my God, how are we going to meet this target? So with what we do is making it normal with inside of the business to have those targets in place. Now, first of all, when we started on collecting the data, it was used as a bit of a chip to throw at the seagulls to sort of go, oh, you know, Queensland's beating, you know, Victoria, you know, Victoria's got the social procurement policy. How can that happen? So, but then the next step is, what is the impact of that? So then capturing and doing the storytelling that goes along with the data. So, you know, and things like, you know, knowing that we're, you know, we talk about Borges cranes, for example. So every crane that you see here in Sydney, it's got the Aboriginal flag on it, and you go, oh yes, that's an Aboriginal business. But when you're travelling throughout Australia, you can actually sort of go, oh, there's First Nations traffic control. There's this company here. And, you know, I live over here at Newtown, and traffic control is around all the time. So that's another Aboriginal business. So it gives you this happy feeling that you know that your company, a tier 1 company, is actually engaging these Aboriginal businesses and social enterprises. And you'll know, and this is the other thing, is our commercial managers start to understand that they're buying more ethically, and they're also buying with purpose. And they're understanding that the impact of that purchase is not just feeding mouths, it's providing job opportunities for many people. So when we look at social enterprises, we look at Aboriginal businesses, we are more likely, well, they are more likely to employ disadvantaged people or more Aboriginal people, etc. So with that storytelling, we're actually been able to use that to form our case studies to demonstrate to our clients, this is what we're doing and this is how we did it. And this is the work that we continue to do. But as I said, it's become normal. It's become business as usual for us. So that storytelling is imperative. But the storytelling and the data go hand in hand.
Yeah, when we started doing our impact reports, I could see business members' eyes light up going, oh, I can compare impact. It's like, no. It's bigger than that data figure. It's actually people's lives that we're changing through this. So all impact is good. But Diego, you had your own conference and awards last week, and we're going to share some of the story, or a story about the Infrastructure Sustainability Council, how you've seen the storytelling work for your members.
Yeah, that's right. So we strongly believe in the power of storytelling. And we had our annual conference last week. So it's basically all people across Australia and New Zealand, and that comes together. And one of the things we do is we promote and we celebrate, and we organize events to give awards. And one of the categories is on excellence of social outcomes. And there was an interesting one last week. That's why I have my notes here, so I can share a few sort of tangible, sort of concrete social outcomes. It's from a road project in WA. Because when we look at metrics only, so just before, so one of the metrics projects they usually use or they report on is employment. So, but the thing is, like, when we look at social outcomes, it's really at a point in time. So how do we make sure that that's an ongoing sort of, that will obviously result in a long-lasting social outcome? So sometimes when they talk about giving jobs for disadvantaged groups or minorities, it's just a number, right? It's just a number of jobs. But the first job isn't the true social impact. So we need to look at the next layers, and that's why we tell the storytelling. So maybe we need to look at the next layer of storytelling, how that sort of first job opened up new opportunities for that family, or created new trajectories that could the family members could find new jobs on an ongoing basis, or how that sort of first job or the employment program could actually shift social positions over time. So that's the next level. This project in WA, they've creating jobs. They're supporting obviously social and economic outcomes. They always come hand in hand, as Sharon was saying before. So this is called the Yaka Danju program, which means that work together in the local Aboriginal language. So in partnership with TAFE in Southwest WA, they provided training to underrepresented demographics, which then led to 140 graduates, 60% being Aboriginal, 60% female. So the participants, they gained essential skills. 75 out of those 140, they actually found jobs and moved on to permanent roles. So it's really improving financial security, self-esteem, and providing ongoing sort of outcomes on our being, enhancing our being, and so on. In addition, the Alliance as well helped to fund this Aboriginal group local, and they managed to purchase machinery that was used during construction, so they now are able to redeploy that machinery across other projects in WA. So it's really that sort of next level of the story we like to tell, and we do so by promoting, celebrating, providing case studies, and really get people together, and hopefully we can influence and inspire others to do better.
When this group were talking last week, we got very inspired by how we can use data and storytelling to tell more people that they should be doing this, that they can't afford not to do this, and about the legacy of the build. It's not just about the building or the bridge or the what have you, but it's how it gets done and, you know, the impact it has on the communities that it impacts. Michael, your view on social traders and how the storytelling and the data that we use helps the sector?
Yeah, we use our data in a lot of ways to tell a lot of stories. And the first thing I would say is to know your audience, to which to use. So we have our theory of change in our annual reports and all of our data that we come through, all the way up to our annual awards as a great example to tell some stories in days like today to connect. I know examples of boards who like to get people in to talk through the change that the program has made on their lives, and that's how they like to report. And there are people that really speaks to it and moves, but we also, one of our main audiences is government, and so we deal with state and federal governments, and so we have to tell a different story, quite a more data-heavy story. And that's when that collection of that hundreds of millions of dollars of social procurement spend and the impact that's created, we can use that to to advocate for other policies, for other states and hopefully federal, to follow in other social procurement policies. So I would just say, know your audience and be able to tell different stories to different people.
Thank you. I think I know this audience and that we're about 3 to 4 minutes from the last break of the day. So would love to hear the last reflections from the three of you here. What's a last piece of advice that you want to leave the room with, a call to action, a lesson that you've learned that you think we shouldn't make that mistake again? Diego, we'll start with you.
Piece of advice, I guess in the infrastructure context would be start early, because if you consider that social outcomes, they need to be informed by community. So it's really making sure the community gets a seat at the table as early as possible. And I'm talking about strategic planning. I'm talking about at a very early stage. That's when you can actually maximize the sort of the outcomes. So make sure start early as soon as possible and go throughout the life cycle of that project. Sometimes it goes for 120 years, because we also do a sort of operations ratings. So it looks at the whole operations life cycle. And I guess, yeah, think outside the box. Just so we encourage innovation as well. And I guess, yeah, that's it. The last one that I want to just quickly mention is at a project level, we've been seeing increasing, it's increasingly obvious, like sort of the shift and the differences. But what we need to do is like going beyond and transcend the project boundaries to understand what's actually happening in the wider sort of context of these communities where projects are being delivered.
Get started and understand where the impact the project can really have. Thanks. Michael, you have some adjacent advice, I believe.
Yeah, my advice was just to get started. It can be hard, and I know it can be intimidating when looking at getting started with data and measurement and things like this, there are a lot of, big brains in the that can be quite intimidating. But I would just say, get started. If you don't know where to get started, come talk to us at Social Traders. We can certainly help. Because you've got to get started on the journey. You never know where you'll end up. Even just hearing Susie, anyone who was lucky enough to be in this last breakout session to talk about how far the environmental measurement has come and where that started from. Surprising to me, because I look at that as really advanced now, and that sort of inspired me to keep going and keep pushing to get social measurement there as well.
Just as well. Thanks, Michael. And Sharon, and thank you, Susie, by the sounds of it. Sharon, your piece of advice, your call to action, your lesson for the room.
Look, a bit like what both Diego and Michael have said is just start the process. One of the things I've learned over the 5 years, 6 years of playing around with data and tracking it and measuring it is that, you set that target and what gets measured gets done. So that's one thing that I have learned. And then what happens with that is you just get better and better at doing it. So just start and enjoy the journey as you go along, because there's some fantastic businesses out there, fantastic people, and there's some wonderful stories to be shared and told. So, yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the three of you for your time and the work that you do.